Hey, this is Pamela Riemenschneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. Hey, Greg, let's talk about inflation. Let's just let's just do it. Chewy disagrees.
He's had enough. Enough of this.
So, what's the inflation news this time around?
Yeah, we have, well, first of all, we have to say that I'm not actually working right now.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
staycationing.
I'm on a staycation, so I had to check in. Yeah, I'm compelled. So yeah, so I did. Of course I've been following the news, and I love these stories where it comes out with what Americans think inflation is versus what the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics shows, because my inherent government skepticism always makes me want to say the people are right. They know what they're spending. The government is wrong. They're trying to make it look not as bad as it is. um, so this story shows that Americans think food at home inflation is 22%, which is 10% higher, 10 points higher than the 13% that the government says. I think, while I want to believe consumers, I think there certainly are items that they notice are way higher than 13%. But I think we don't recognize when things stay the same. If you think about like the gasoline prices kind of going like this, we really felt it when it was averaging over $4 a gallon. That really hurt. And then when it dropped to three, it's like, all right, back to normal. I stopped thinking about it. Then it goes up to 350 right now again. It really hurts. It's like it's always more dramatic when it's going up and painful than you even notice when it comes back down.
Right, right. There are certain things that are definitely more expensive than a year ago, especially depending on the market you're in. I've been amazed at how different dairy prices are, depending where you are, what a gallon of milk costs, and that's one of the things that a lot of consumers really feel and really notice because they're so used to buying and not having any fluctuation in the price of it. Like for a long time, a gallon of milk was, I don't even know because I don't buy milk. I mean, I do. I actually buy 3 half gallons, the box at Costco. So, I mean, I don't even
It
know.
is cheaper at Costco than most grocery stores, and it's cheaper at probably Lidl. I know it is at Aldi than a
Right.
traditional grocery store, but yes, they're all up.
Right. They're all up. For me, I mean, the thing that I noticed actually the most was when Dr. B at HEB went from $1 to $1.26. That is 26%. I mean, it's pretty easy, even for, as you said, a journalist to math out. But for those of us in the produce industry, I feel like prices are so variable so often that sometimes it's really difficult. And there, I still see promotions in produce. Aggressive promotions, especially in the markets that I'm in, because food is so competitively priced here. But there are, I am certain, and I'm watching the social media accounts that I follow, a lot of frugal eating, frugal tips, food tips for people, and a lot of the messaging is that I'm trying to save money on food. Food costs so much, shortages, a lot of anxiety from consumers. And even in this story that showed that consumers think that inflation is higher than it is, they're saying that 55% of consumers they surveyed report they are not getting enough of the food they want to eat. And 18% are not getting enough to eat. So that it is certainly affecting consumers, although that range between whatever the BLS says versus what consumers are feeling in their wallets, they're already tightening up as much as they can. And to see prices go up on top of that, I'm sure skews that opinion.
Well, one of the things I saw in there that was interesting to me is that 75% of consumers said they want retailers to provide consistent prices. That is a completely unreasonable expectation. I mean, I think consumers are smart enough to know about seasonality in the produce department. So they should be used to fluctuating prices based on seasonality. I mean, there are things like bananas that you can have consistently, but everything else is always going to fluctuate, and that's normal. I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be. And really, everything in the perimeter, for the most part, there has to be fluctuation. So, they're right about rising food prices, but asking for consistent prices is completely unreasonable.
And I really don't think, I mean, 70, I want to know how they ask the question, because I feel like if consumers went to the store and all of a sudden they didn't see, a loss leader, for example, maybe people don't understand what the concept of loss leaders is. When you see something that's like super dirt cheap at a store on mega promotion, Sprouts is one of those stores that used to do this quite often. If they actually went into the store and it was the same price every time, and they're just going with no promotion model, I think they might be a little sad. I mean, Aldi, for example, is typically pretty even keeled on most of its prices, except for the Aldi Savers, like just the few things that are on sale. But if every store went to that and you had no kind of treasure hunt, I think people would react negatively. As much as they would like consistently low prices, that I think we're trained to look for bargains, and if we didn't have it, then we would be even more upset.
Well, that's true, but there's also the concept that Costco has done with the hot dog and Coke deal that stayed the same for 20 plus years. Retailers could pick an item or two and say, we will not raise the prices on this. And meanwhile, everything else has to fluctuate with the market. I
Right,
mean,
right.
Costco's argument is no one comes in just to get the hot dog and Coke. I mean, there are a few people, but not very many. Most people are coming in buying everything else.
One would argue that they're doing that with bananas already.
They've been
Um,
doing that with bananas for a long time. Yeah, that's probably true.
yeah. Another story we had this week was the CDC officially closing the investigation of the E. coli outbreak that was in Michigan, 6 states. It was surrounding Michigan. And initially, they tied it or Wendy's tied it to everyone who had been officially diagnosed with E. coli um, had eaten something from Wendy's, and they weren't sure what it was. And they preemptively pulled romaine lettuce from sandwiches only, not salads, just sandwiches. It was very confusing messaging. And it remained confusing because we had no source identified. Um,
Yeah, it's still confusing, and I feel like romaine lettuce is getting picked on because they've been involved in some of these outbreaks before, and so there's a tendency, a guilt by association, to tie it again. But a lot of these outbreaks, they have been clearly able to tie it to a product, and they weren't able to this time. And it really, I feel bad for the romaine industry because they're getting. I mean, they are not officially named here, and it's very likely that they had nothing to do with it. They could
yeah,
have, but there's no proof.
right. So, I mean, it said more than 80% of sick people who were interviewed by public health officials reported eating at a Wendy's restaurant in one of these states. Many of them ate burgers and sandwiches with romaine lettuce, but the specific ingredient that caused the outbreak could not be determined. This is something I feel like the produce industry needs to follow up on, because it's something that affects business. It's something. I mean, we all want to find the source of outbreaks. We all want to eliminate these food safety problems. But in this case, I just really feel like there wasn't enough to point at here, and they never got any. It's got to be incredibly frustrating. It is incredibly frustrating.
Right. It almost reminds me of the tomato outbreak back 15 years ago, where they linked it to tomatoes and then recommended that no one eat any tomatoes from anywhere. And it turned out it wasn't even tomatoes. It was a hot pepper from a farm in Mexico.
Right.
Uh, it was, yeah, I mean, Wendy's can do what Wendy's does, but the CDC has to be really careful about jumping to conclusions. And it's just more frustration between the industry and government. And it's like, it's frustrating when they do too much. It's frustrating when they do too little.
Yeah, I distinctly remember that salsa outbreak. It was salsa, was what they were kind of saying because I happened to be pregnant with my first child at the time, and my one of my cravings was going to Chewy's and eating as much salsa as I could stuff in. And they're telling you not to eat salsa. Not a great look for me. It was hard times. And but I do remember that, and it ended up being a serrano pepper and not even related to tomatoes. And tomatoes really got run through the ringer on that. This time, I believe it was Wendy's that did its own caution to consumers, and it wasn't actually the government telling you not to eat romaine from Wendy's, but the whole thing got very publicized. Of course, we ran that news because that is newsworthy to our readers, of course. I haven't seen a whole lot of follow up since the initial notification about it, and I doubt that we will see anything follow up in the mainstream media about it either. But this is definitely
Which
something that we,
the produce industry probably would prefer. I
right,
mean,
right.
any kind of mention is bad, and of course we cover it because our readers are not consumers. I mean, they are consumers also, but they need to know how it's being portrayed other places and how the government's handling it. And I would suspect we're not done following the story because we need to know how we got to this place, how the government got to this place. Like we said in that outbreak 15 years ago, there were a lot of changes in the way that the government handles outbreaks and recalls and announcements to the public. And I mean, it's not that dramatic this time, but there definitely has to be a conversation because I think this wasn't handled properly, and all you can do is learn from it and do it better and differently next time.
Yeah. Well, for now, that's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up.
And it's back to vacation for me.
I enjoy that. Enjoy all the golf you're probably playing, right?
I did play golf this week, yes.